Okay, hello. How are you? I hope you're doing well. So this video today is going to be this very important topic, which we couldn't live without, and that is this huge process that happens in your cells all the time. And this process is called cellular respiration. So that's what the title of our notes is going to be today. Okay. And so cellular respiration is very, very important, and it is the reason why we have to eat. Okay, we need energy to live, and we get our energy from our food. And cellular respiration is that process that breaks down your food and turns it into energy that we can use to live. Also, cellular respiration is how we take our oxygen that we're breathing in and use that to generate energy. Okay, so cellular respiration is a cellular process that breaks down food and uses oxygen to generate energy to live. Uses oxygen to generate energy for all living organisms. Okay, so no matter what the living organism is, whether it's a plant or an animal or a bacteria, all living things have to do cellular respiration. All living things have to eat. Not all living things have to use oxygen, but many of us do. And so we use food and we use oxygen and we make energy. And that energy that we make is called ATP. Okay. And that ATP can then directly be used to do all the things that you have to do for life. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down this whole process into three steps. And before I do that, I'm going to give you a general formula. Okay. So usually when we teach this, we use glucose as the food source, okay? But I want to point out that it can be other types of food sources. For example, glucose is a carbohydrate, and we usually use this to demonstrate how cellular respiration works. But you could also eat fats, and we use fats for fuel also, and you could also eat protein. So you can have three food types, which is carbohydrate, lipid, or protein. All three of those undergo cellular respiration to make energy. Okay, but we're just going to focus on glucose, which is a carbohydrate. And so you need glucose and you need oxygen. Okay, oxygen is an atom that always comes in pairs. Okay, so you never see an oxygen just floating around in the air by itself. It always comes in pairs. There's always two of them. So we always write O2 for oxygen. And then after all this crazy stuff that happens in the cell, at the end, what you end up with is you end up with CO2, carbon dioxide, which you exhale. You also actually make some water, okay? And so you're making water all the time. So if you go like if you take your glasses and you blow on them, you can see how they fog up. Okay, so that is some water that I generated inside my body. Cool, right? And then, of course, the whole point of cellular respiration is to make energy, which is what we call ATP. Okay, and I explained what ATP was in the last video, but this is the outcome of this huge cellular respiration process. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to break down this process into three parts. Okay, the first part is called glycolysis. Okay, so I'm going to say there are three steps in cellular respiration. I'm just going to briefly introduce them to you. There are a lot more details that I'm leaving out, but just for the sake of this class, you don't need to know all the details. But certainly, if you are interested in it, there are lots of YouTube videos out there and textbooks that are out there that have all this. So the three steps of cellular respiration can be broken down into these. The first step is called glycolysis. Okay, glycolysis is step number one. And glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm of the cell. So occurs, oops, in the cytoplasm of the cell. Okay, so let me just briefly take a little aside here and draw a cell for you so we can kind of imagine what's going on and where. Okay, so I'm going to draw a cell. I'm going to make it kind of reddish. And so this is a picture of a cell, okay, and it could be any one of your cells or it could be a bacteria cell. So this is a cell, okay? All living things are made of cells. In the cell, we've got this big structure called a nucleus. I'm going to draw that here. Inside the nucleus is the DNA. That's sometimes the largest structure if you're an animal. If you're a plant, then that's not the largest structure. Okay, so we've got the nucleus. We also have this organelle called the mitochondria, which I'm going to explain in a little bit. So let me put some labels on here. Mitochondria. This is the nucleus. And then you've got all this other stuff in the cell, but we don't need to focus on those right now. But the liquid in the cell is called the cytoplasm. And that's what's happening. That's where glycolysis is happening. Okay. So glycolysis is this first step and is happening in the cytoplasm, which is the liquid part of the cell. Okay. And so in glycolysis, what happens is, let's see, I guess I'm gonna switch to pink. What happens is we take glucose, which is a 6 carbon molecule, and we undergo 10 steps. So I'm going to put a big arrow here. I'm just going to say there's 10 chemical reactions that happen. Each chemical reaction is facilitated by an enzyme. And what comes out of these 10 steps are the following. Okay, I'm going to have to make room here. We have 2 molecules of this molecule called a pyruvate. Okay, and so what I want to point out now is that glucose has 6 carbons, pyruvate has 3 carbons. So what happens is this glucose is going to be split into 2, and each piece is going to have 3 carbons. Okay, so let me rewrite this here. So 2 pyruvate. 1 pyruvate has 3 carbons. Okay, so you had this 6 carbon molecule split into 2 pieces, each piece having 3 carbons each. I'll show you a picture in a second. Then we also have, I mentioned this in the last video, but there is this molecule called NAD, which gets reduced into NADH. So we're going to get 2 NADH molecules. And then we're going to get 2 ATP molecules. Okay, so I'm running out of room here. I'm so sorry. So I'm going to do plus 2 ATP molecules. So this is the formula for glycolysis. Let me highlight it for you. Okay. So this is, I'm just going to highlight this. Actually, I'm going to make a straighter line. Sorry. Okay. And I'm going to actually go back here and relabel these things that I took away. So this is the nucleus, and this is the cytoplasm. Okay. So this is the formula that you need to know for glycolysis. You have 1 molecule of glucose for every when cellular respiration starts, and it's going to be split into 2 pyruvate, 2 NADH, 2 ATP. Okay. And let me show you a picture of glycolysis so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. Hang on, I gotta find my pictures. Sorry. There it is. Okay. Okay, so I don't want you to get too intimidated by this picture, okay? I already generalized what's happening, and all you have to know is there are three steps in cellular respiration. The first one being glycolysis. This is what glycolysis kind of looks like. So you start off with this glucose molecule here, okay? Glucose, as we've learned, is a monomer of larger carbohydrates. It is a monosaccharide, and it has 6 carbons, okay? Then you're going to use an enzyme, in this case it's hexokinase, to generate this new molecule, which is called glucose 6-phosphate. Then you're going to use this enzyme to make this molecule. Then you're going to use this enzyme to make this molecule. Then you're going to use this enzyme. So these enzymes are written above the arrows. And at this point, this molecule gets split into 2 pieces, each piece containing 3 carbons. See here, there are 3 carbons, and here there are 3 carbons, okay? And then each of those molecules are going to go down the line, and you're going to just end up with pyruvate, which is a 3 carbon molecule. So this is the end product of glycolysis here, pyruvate. And that's what I've written down here. There's going to be 2 of them. We have 2 NADH, and you can see here that 1 NADH is produced here. And because there are 2 of these pyruvates, you're going to end up with 2 NADH. Okay, so you're going to just double everything at this point. So you're going to have 2 pyruvate, 2 NADH, and then you're making some ATP here. Okay, so it's going to be 2. So this is what's happening in the cytoplasm of your cell. So what we have now is we have some ATP made, which is great. We have some NADH that has been reduced, and we have 2 pyruvate. So we're going to move into the next step. The next step is called the citric acid cycle. Okay, the citric acid cycle happens in the mitochondria. So it occurs inside the mitochondria. And so what I need to do now is I'm going to draw a picture of a mitochondria, and I'm going to show you exactly where this is happening. Okay, let's see here. We have, here's the mitochondria, and this is an organelle inside the cell, and then let me label some of this, but there is this outer membrane and an inner membrane, okay? So this right here is the outer membrane. This right here is the inner membrane. And you'll notice that this inner membrane is all wrinkly. Okay, it's got all these wrinkles in it. These wrinkles allow the inner membrane to be way larger, so there's a lot more surface area, and it gets squished up into this smaller space, which causes it to get all wrinkled up like that, which means there's more surface area, and that's very important for cellular respiration. There's more room to generate more energy. Okay, so the mitochondria in general makes energy, and that's what we're talking about right now. And so the citric acid cycle is happening inside the mitochondria, so right here. Okay, so I'm going to draw this like this. It's a cycle, so I'm going to draw it like a little, it's going in the one direction, and it's called the citric acid cycle. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to give you the formula like I did before. Okay, I did that in pink. Okay, and so the formula for the citric acid cycle is this. We're going to have 2 pyruvate, okay, and that's going to go into the mitochondria, okay, and then what's going to be generated out of this is we're going to get, let's see, 8 NADH. Oops, I'm sorry. That's just messy. Okay, NADH. So we're going to reduce 8 NADs into 8 NADH. Plus, we're going to get this new molecule that gets reduced, which is called FADH2. Okay, so just write these down. You don't have to memorize this. And then we're going to make 6 carbon dioxides, and then we're going to have 2 ATP. Okay, so there's all these steps that happen in the citric acid cycle, lots of chemical reactions, each one catalyzed by an enzyme. And what comes out of the citric acid is all this stuff. Okay, so let me just highlight this formula. And let me just point out a couple of things. One pyruvate molecule has 3 carbons. Okay, 2 of these means you have 6 carbons. These 6 carbon dioxides is where those carbons go. And you are exhaling those carbon dioxides. So you eat food that has carbon in it, and then you exhale the carbon out. So that's weird. We take our carbon in as sugar, carbohydrate, and then you exhale it as a gas. So when you're exhaling carbon dioxide, which is coming from your food. Isn't that weird? Okay, so what I want to do is I want to show you a picture of the citric acid cycle just so you can get an appreciation of, of what I'm talking about. Okay, so oh yeah, okay, this is good. It's not as detailed as I'd like, but it's okay. So you have right here is where the pyruvate is, okay? The pyruvate gets modified and turns into what we call acetyl-CoA. And then that molecule gets modified to this molecule, and this molecule gets modified to this, then to this, and to this, and to this, and then it's this cycle that goes on and on and on. Okay, and so what I want to show you is that we have some NADHs forming, we have some FADH2s forming, and we have some ATP forming. Okay, and so that's what's coming out of this. And the carbon dioxide is just being released. So here's some carbon dioxide here. Okay, and so all the carbon dioxide is going to be released. Okay, so that's step 2 that happens inside the mitochondria. Then the last step of the cellular respiration process is called the electron transport chain. Step 3 is called the electron transport chain. And what's happening in this step, it happens in the mitochondria, but this is the most important step to generate the most ATP. Okay, so this is where the money is being made. This is where most of the ATP comes from. So I'm going to say it occurs in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. Okay, so I'm going to draw a picture of a mitochondria here. Okay, here's the mitochondria. That's not a very good one. I got to do it again. There, that's much better. Okay, let me scoot up. And then there's an inner membrane. So I got to draw the inner membrane. Okay. And I want to point out that in the citric acid cycle is happening in the middle part here. And what's being generated are all those NADHs and FADH2s. And so the inner membrane is here, and there are some proteins that are embedded in this inner membrane. So I'm just going to draw some proteins like this. Okay. And so these are integral proteins that go all the way through this membrane. And so what I'd like to do is I would like to put a box around this area, and I'm going to zoom into the box and show you exactly what's happening. Okay, so I'm going to draw a box here, and then I'm going to zoom in. This box is going to be enlarged. Okay, so it's like I'm going to enlarge it like this. Okay, I'm going to get really big, but I'm going to draw it. We're going to draw it together in our notebook. Okay. So let me draw my big zoom in box here. Okay, and so I just want to point out that this box is this one here. Okay, so what's happening is right through the middle of the box is the inner membrane. So I'm going to draw that. And remember, membranes are made of phospholipids, and we have this double phospholipid bilayer. Whoops. And so I'm going to draw these phospholipids, and if you remember, they have these heads and then they have tails. And the heads are all on the outside and are all on the inside. Do you remember this? So this is when I went over what a membrane was about. So this is an inner membrane of a mitochondria. And so I'm just drawing the heads of the phospholipids. And remember, they have these legs, and the legs are unsaturated. So they kick out, and they're going to kick each other, which is going to make it an oil. Okay, so this is going to be oil at room temperature, or liquid at room temperature. So I'm just drawing the little legs here. And so this is the inner membrane of the mitochondria. Okay, I've zoomed in. Okay, in this membrane, there are some protein. Okay, I'm going to draw these protein as blue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw several of them. So here's one, here's two, here's three. Okay, and then I'm going to draw this big protein here. It's got this big old top on it. Okay. This big protein here is an enzyme, and it's a special enzyme, and it's called ATP synthase. I'm going to label it for you here. ATP synthase. And this is an enzyme that actually makes ATP. Okay. So inside the mitochondria up here, we have the citric acid cycle that is happening. And what's happened is we're going to have a lot of NADH and FADH2 being generated from the citric acid cycle. So what's going to happen is these proteins here are called proton pumps. And what they do is they pump hydrogen atoms off of the NADH and FADH2. Okay, actually, that's misspelled here. Sorry. This is supposed to be FADH2. These proton pumps are going to take hydrogens off of the NADH and FADH2 and pump them through to this side of the mitochondria. Okay, so it's going to take hydrogen, it's going to take it off like this. Okay, it's going to take those hydrogens off of the NADH and FADH2 and pump them into here. So what's going to be happening is there's going to be a higher and higher concentration of hydrogens on the outside of the inner membrane. Okay, so up here, that's called the inner membrane space. So there's going to be a lot of hydrogens pumped in here, more than what's comfortable. Okay, so two things are going to happen right now. What's going to happen is because there is a higher concentration of hydrogens up here, they're going to passively diffuse through ATP synthase. This passive diffusion is going to cause this enzyme to make ATP. Okay, so ATP is going to be generated. And that is very important. And that's the whole point of cellular respiration. A second thing important happens is the oxygen that you breathed in when you inhale gets into your cells, and these hydrogens are going to attach to that, and you're going to make H2O in here. Okay, so the oxygen that you're breathing in is going to attach to two of the hydrogens. This happens inside the mitochondria, and this is where you generate water. So the big picture point is that you are generating ATP and H2O in the electron transport chain of cellular respiration. Okay? So that's the whole picture. It's a little bit complicated, but not too bad. Cellular respiration happens in 3 steps: glycolysis, citric acid cycle, and electron transport chain. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope you're having a great day, and I will see you next time.